Hello, spoilers today for lots of stuff. Django Unchained, How to Train Your Dragon 2 Inside Out, The Time Machine, 2001 A Space Odyssey, Dune, basically every single MCU film. Just assume if you haven't seen an MCU film, it might get a little bit spoiled here. For a couple Marvel comics, The Infinity War or Infinity Gauntlet, I don't know which one. Uh, Comic book as well as the Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe comic book. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to Cut Both Ways.
Welcome. I'm Ray.
I'm Kiki.
Welcome to What If, the Marvel show that aired a few weeks ago, I guess now.
That just talks about what if there was one small change to the timeline we know and love.
Know and love is a bit of an overstatement.
Which part? Know or love?
Yes. Yeah, well, let's get right into it. I loved this. I mean, I feel like I was sort of like set out to love this from the beginning because I love, action heavy things, and this was definitely more action heavy than what Marvel tends to be.
I thought it was okay.
You
I
thought it was
didn't
okay?
love it.
No?
But I quite liked it. I would spend the time again to watch it, but I don't think I loved it.
I don't know that I'd watch it again just because the plots were kind of like basic.
Oh no, I don't mean rewatch it. I mean, I don't wish that I had my time back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a
I
good
don't want
point.
a refund.
I I'm a little upset that we're talking about this just because I feel like the Marvel movies or just the Marvel brand has just taken over the zeitgeist of culture since it started with like back in Iron Man. It's just become such a like prominent part of what everyone's talking about all the time. And I'm not the biggest fan of most of their movies. There's maybe like 4 movies that I'm like I would watch this movie again. Whereas the other, 20 movies
hmm.
I just don't really care for.
Yeah, I guess I the reason that I'm so enchanted by the first arc of the Marvel universe isn't really because they're good movies. It's because they're characters who I love,
Mhm.
right? I mean, ever since I watched the first Iron Man movie, I just kind of really loved the characters. I love Iron Man.
I agree, and like back then I was like, in my teens when
Right.
that first
I
Iron Man
was
movie
too.
came out. And so I've kind of like grown up with it, and so I do have a level of attachment to these characters and to
Exactly.
this like universe, I guess.
Mhm.
But I was so young and it was the first time anyone's ever done this, and I definitely feel like there's a better way to do it. And I feel like What If is the better way to do it.
Hmm.
That it's not necessarily all these stories are exactly attached and each one is connecting and leading into the other one, which, it kind of plays out that way by the end of it. But each movie wasn't reliant, or each episode of this What If wasn't reliant on you having watched 3 or 4 other movies
Mhm.
or other
Right.
episodes. And I really like that. Each episode could stand on its own, and they found a way to bring it all together. And that's sort of like it came with the theme of the show that there's this multiverse.
Yeah.
And so like they sort of have a free pass to be able to do that. So I understand why maybe they haven't really done that in the past. But I want to see more of this. That it's not each movie
Just
is here's this
unconnected.
next character that we're
Mhm.
going to introduce in our next ensemble film. Here is a cool movie that we want to create
Mhm.
that, maybe we're going to tie it into our next ensemble film, but
It's funny that you say that because each episode of What If introduced a character for an ensemble.
that's exactly what I'm saying. That this one they got away with it, but even if they didn't ensemble it, each of these episodes was interesting-ish in its own way, and didn't like wasn't relying on okay, I know
Yeah.
that this character is going to end up fighting against Thanos at the
Yeah,
end
the
of this arc.
ensemble wasn't really entirely necessary. It was
Yeah,
very cool, but it wasn't entirely necessary.
it was cool. It felt a little unnecessary, and I almost would have been fine if it didn't happen. Like I would have been fine if
Mhm.
it just ended with the Watcher fighting
Mhm.
against this like multiverse. I understand why they did it because like the ensemble is sort of the core element of the MCU. Is that they
Yeah.
introduce these characters. Here's how all these characters come together and fight against a
Yeah, I
singular
get it.
foe.
I mean, you know what was a great animated anthology? The Matrix anthology of
Exactly,
animated films.
exactly.
That
It
was
was
beautiful.
it was beautiful. Each one was sort of like contained in its own world and had different themes and like
Well, and very different art
art
styles.
styles and settings, I think, is the biggest thing for me. Every Marvel film has basically the same setting. And that's kind of, I think, what's getting to me,
Yeah.
is that they've introduced, so spoilers for Eternals, I guess. At the end of it, they introduce this character, the Black Knight, who is
Right.
he's literally the Arthurian Black Knight. I don't know how he is in the comic books. I've never really known anything about him. The only thing I know about him is he's the reason Taskmaster fights with a sword. I was like looking up Taskmaster backstory, and they're like, the reason he fights with a sword
Who's
is
Taskmaster?
Taskmaster is. Did you watch the Black Widow movie?
Oh, right. Yes. Okay.
Taskmaster is this character that
Yeah.
they have photographic reflexes is what they call the superpower. It's one of my
Right.
favorite superpowers. They see something, they know how to do it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was a very forgettable movie.
It was. But so the interesting thing that I liked about what I heard about the Black Knight, I don't know if this is true, but I want to see this. And this is also a big thing of what I hated about Eternals. No, none of these films show them in a different time period or different setting. Like Guardians of the Galaxy and a little bit of the Eternals and a little bit of Thor, I think, you could argue are in a different setting, but they don't feel like a different setting to me, because Eternals, it's sort of like flashbacks to them being like, here, we're going to like plant some seeds,
Yeah.
look at how we're contributing to humanity. And then with Guardians of the Galaxy, though it is like in outer space, nothing feels like too
Otherworldly.
otherworldly. Yeah, all the aliens are humanoid. We talked about this in one of our early
This is
episodes.
just a problem in science fiction, is that all the aliens are humanoid, and that's because, we've had these restrictions, or not restrictions, but limitations in the past, where, you can't get a human actor to somehow grow like, just become an inhuman looking thing. And more than that, more than the boundaries of what you can achieve with special effects and animation, is like the boundary of human thought, really. We can't
Yeah.
really seem to conceive something otherworldly that we've never seen before, because, well, that's just really hard. I don't know if it's even possible.
It is hard. I don't know if it's possible either. I feel like maybe Stanley Kubrick's Space Odyssey came the closest to that, where by the end of it you just have no idea what's happening, and a lot of people are like, I don't understand this like 5 minute like segment of like shapes and colors, and the idea is that he is transcending like human thought. Anyway, we're going on a bit of a tangent here that has nothing to do with What If. Basically what I'm saying is, What If had interesting settings, but they were all still within that Marvel setting of like modern day, here's how these heroes are
Yeah.
going to end up coming together.
Well, I understand it for What If, because each episode was, what, 30 minutes long? Less than that, maybe?
Around that. But what
Around
the
30
point I want to
minutes.
make is that in the Eternals, they introduce this character, the Black Knight. The Black Knight is the Arthurian legend hero, not hero, character who is like the like master swordsman that has never been defeated. He's like immortal, basically. And so I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but I would have liked to see this, that the character originally is historical. Like you literally go
Right,
through,
so
they're
you
like,
want to see the history of him.
I want to see
You
the
wanna
history. I want to
King
see
Arthur.
I want to see him fighting in, like, I guess Shang-Chi did it a little bit as well, where they showed the Mandarin fighting some armies.
Right, yeah.
And that was cool. And I want a whole movie of that.
Yeah.
I want an entire movie of a completely different setting.
Yeah,
That isn't
and I
just,
think that
humans
Marvel
in
can do
space.
that.
I think they can do that too.
Because they have all of this time, right, to tell a story, because they're running a whole arc. They're not just running a single movie. The problem with having otherworldly settings is that it takes time to set up and to get people to a point where they buy in to those settings, right? You can't
But you could
just...
easily fold in these characters into the modern setting. Like, it would be a shame because you would just take this setting and maybe a successful movie that is set in a different time period and then force that character into modern time. But
Well, I
easily
think
they
that's
could
what
have
you would
been...
do.
Yeah, exactly. Easily they could have been a like Arthurian time period Black Knight movie, and then Then you do him in the Eternals.
Mm-hmm.
Then you do him showing up, like, who is this guy? And then he opens the box, you see the sword, and you're like, oh, that's the Black Knight's sword. Because I had no idea what was happening there.
Yeah. It was a post-credit scene.
It was a
so
post-credit scene, and those are kind of
for
supposed
what
to be
it's
a little
worth,
bit like,
yeah.
what is this? But, I mean, it would have been awesome if there was this film we could harken back to. And if they do a future film that is like the Black Knight in Arthurian times, I'll take it all back. Like, I'm not going to take it all back. It's been 24 movies. They could have done this by now. And what if, even though each of the settings is technically just the movies we've seen with a slight tweak that leads to like catastrophic differences, I guess is the idea. But they felt different enough because they also had different themes that I think we haven't seen. They had huge themes of loss in all of these. Each of these characters, it's not just the Black Widow that they show where she's like, I have nothing in my universe to go back to. Each of these characters kind of has like no reason really to go back to their universe. Like Doctor Strange, his episode I think was my favorite one, the Doctor Strange episode,
because it's very good.
We've never seen that level of loss before, where he literally he doesn't just lose his like love or whatever, and it's the classic like you can't like time traveler. I think that's the literal name of the movie. Time Traveler. Is that the one where he like the moon explodes and he goes to the future on accident?
What?
I can't remember what I'm talking about. The Time Machine.
Oh,
where
okay,
it starts out with him trying to like save the woman he loves, classic story, and then he keeps trying and trying and trying, but like it's like a fixed point in reality basically, and he ends up destroying his known universe just trying to save this one woman. And we've never seen that level of loss before. The closest is the Thanos snap, which is I think why I liked that movie. Like I mentioned it before, that Infinity War and Ragnarok are kind of the only two movies that I like in the MCU, and I think that's because in Infinity War they lose at the end, and that was never done before. It's always the hero like punch punch punch. Oh no, is he gonna lose? No, he doesn't lose. Of course he doesn't lose. Even Shang-Chi, which like could have maybe done something with that, they did have a big like feeling of loss in it, where like he has to kill his dad basically. But no Marvel movie has gone to that level before, except for in this What If, and I think they felt comfortable doing it because these were throwaway sort of stories, and that upsets me a little bit.
Well, no, that's what makes them so great. That's why these small anthologies are so important. That's why the Pixar shorts are so important. It allows creators to sort of get their feet wet, first of all. A lot of fresh animators are given a shot at these sorts of things. Like, hey, you can animate one episode of this thing, or like a Pixar short or something.
It would have been cool if they did what the Animatrix did, where each episode was a different animation
that would have been
style.
Very cool.
That would have been very cool, and I think it would have been really
secondly,
appropriate.
Secondly, it lets them experiment with stories that they don't think they could tell in a larger format.
Yeah, I agree with that, but why do they think they can't tell it? I think they could. I think that we've had 24 fucking movies now. Like, tell us a different story, please.
Yeah, of course they could.
I was tired of the Marvel formula after the Avengers. After the first Avengers movie, I was like, cool, that was cool. I wonder what they're going to do next. And then they just did the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
I want to see a movie where, like, something I can't expect happens.
Yeah.
Even in Infinity War, I knew they were going to lose because of the way that they, like, made that movie. It just felt really different as they're shooting it. It focused more on like Thanos, and it was like weird and like it kind of felt like Thanos was unbeatable from the beginning of that movie, and then so by the end when he wins, you're not like too surprised. But in Endgame, I knew they were going to undo everything. I was sad that they can't.
Of course.
I had this theory for Endgame that I really thought was a good idea, and I really hoped it was true before it came out. And like I said, I can't predict plots, and I'm usually wrong when I try to predict plots. And I was wrong about this, and I'm upset about that. I predicted that, because I watched the trailer. I usually don't watch trailers because I hate spoilers to such a degree. I was hoping that because I knew they wanted to write out Iron Man and they wanted to write out Captain America, and I think they wanted to write out a few other characters. I think they wanted to write out more, But I think that those actors were still willing to like be in the MCU. But I knew for a fact, I could tell after after Infinity War, I was like, this is going to be the end of Iron Man and Captain America. I can like tell. So here's my headcanon of what's going to happen. My headcanon was they're going to go through, fighting against Thanos again. And I had read Infinity War, so I kind of knew how that story went. I thought they were going to introduce Adam Warlock, who's like a pivotal character that they never really introduced. They teased him in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but they never introduced him. And I don't know that they will. They might have dropped that plot line. I'm not too upset. He's a weird character. Adam Warlock basically gets the gauntlet, and then he becomes kind of tyrannical immediately. So I was thinking someone's going to get the gauntlet. I thought it was going to be Nebula. I thought Nebula was going to get the gauntlet because Nebula's never really been in a position of power. And they did do that in the movie where they elevated her like independence and gave her own character. But I thought she was going to get the gauntlet, and then she was going to be like, they're going to be like, oh, Nebula, you got the gauntlet. Sweet. Bring everyone back. And she's going to be like, no, I kind of agree with my father. There are too many people in this universe. Though I disagree with his methods, and though I think he's a piece of shit, and he like tortured me basically, and I wanted him to die, I agree with his moral. I will give you an offer though. If you want me to bring someone back, give me someone in return. And that it was going to be Iron Man was going to say, I want Spider-Man back, so I will sacrifice myself. And Captain America was going to be like, I want Bucky back, so I'm going to sacrifice myself. And then, a few other characters were going to do that to bring back the characters that we wanted in the next arc. But then we were still going to have this, like, half the universe was wiped out. And that was going to be a permanent thing that they couldn't undo. And I think that would have been an interesting feeling of loss in future movies. That the worlds are kind of, like, fucked. Mm-hmm. And that maybe we'd go see have another Captain Marvel movie and show her having to, like, ping pong around the galaxy to deal with these like supervillains that pop up due to the fact that half the world was destroyed, and that doesn't necessarily mean that half of the good guys and half of the bad guys were gone. It could mean that there's a majority bad guys left in the universe because it was at random and uncaring, as he says. We're super not talking about What If.
Yeah, and I think what you're asking for from the Marvel movies is a little unreasonable. And why I say this is because they are summer blockbuster style movies meant for people to have fun and to take their kids to, and it just wouldn't work in that format. I hope that they explore that sort of thing further in their shows because those are more nuanced, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that the way that they do their arcs, I don't think that that would be a feature in those big releases.
I don't know why. Because if I think back to the summer blockbusters of, yesteryear, before, that which must not be named the MCU, there are movies. Like, Die Hard is, like, one of the most popular action movies of all time. Half of the good guys die in each of those movies. Like, the only time they, like, don't is when they are, like, one of the pivotal characters.
Sure, but Die Hard isn't marketed towards children.
Yeah, but
there's no follow-up merchandise release. There are no action figures. There's like
I get that, but if I compare, like comparatively, movies in general have sort of shifted toward this more PG-13 trend.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think that you can capture that level of like loss in a PG-13 movie because I feel like Pixar does it all the time. We talked about this before, that they have these serious moments. They have these themes of loss and like tragedy, and they don't just make a joke about it, or they don't undo it immediately after. They don't have someone come and go, oh, I'm the magical wish granting fairy. They're back to life.
Yeah, of course. But Pixar chooses very carefully to kill maybe one character.
Yeah.
The loss is not always death in Pixar,
I know.
The loss is a lot of the time the loss is this emotional loss of something that you've held on to.
I don't know. After watching How to Train Your Dragon 2, I feel like Pixar like nails it with the loss because I was super invested in the dad in How to Train Your Dragon 2, and they killed him, and I was like, no.
A lot of the time in Pixar, the stakes are kind of small. Like, think of Inside Out. Inside Out was wildly popular.
I never watched that movie.
I know you didn't, but Inside Out was wildly popular, and the loss was not a death. The
It
loss was
was,
growing
though.
up.
But they did kill the character.
No.
The imaginary friend.
Yeah, they did.
I've never
That's
seen the
true.
movie, and I know that, and
The
that was a
imaginary friend.
huge,
It is a
a
huge
death of a
loss.
character, more than a death of a character, a complete erasure of a character,
Mm-hmm.
and like, so, yeah, so I think you can do a PG-13 movie where a character dies, and I feel like I want to go on a bit of a tangent here. Sorry, I realize I'm talking a lot, and we need to talk about what if, because that's what this episode's supposed to be about, and we will. But I think basically the tangent I want to go on is that we have just watched another Marvel film. This is the second, or another Marvel content. This is the second Marvel content we've consumed, and we're talking about, and we talk about it a lot, and we've enjoyed. Like, let's not try to, I'm gonna like harp on it a lot and talk about the things I dislike and like about stuff. But it is something that we liked. But the reason I liked it, I think, is because they had so much funding and they had so much thing. They had so much resources. Anyway, the rant I want to go on. Oh my god, I lost my train of thought.
Oh no.
Oh no. The preamble made me lose my train of thought. Oh god, it's gone. It's super gone.
No.
If I remember it, I'll bring it back up.
Oh, I think this is a sign. This is a sign from the universe saying talk about what if. The thing
It's
that
true.
you're here to talk
The
about.
thing that you're here to talk about. I'm sad. That's upsetting.
Oh.
Oh, okay. I kind of remember what I want to talk
Okay.
about. Okay. The thing I want to talk about is I talk about it a lot in a few of the other episodes that like, oh, spoiler warning for characters that live and characters that die. In like things like Arcane, things like the Eternals, how I was like, kill off all these characters. And even in Dune, where we're like, oh, they kill some of these characters, maybe I hope they live because they didn't really explore them. I feel like every piece of content that comes out recently is either too scared to kill a character or too scared to let a character not die. You there's no in between anymore. And killing, I guess killing is sort of the wrong way to put it, that you're right that they don't necessarily kill these characters, but it's this feeling of loss. And the easiest way to do that is to kill a character, because what we're investing in these pieces of content are the characters and their character growth and their character stories. And so when you cut a character story short, you feel that loss. So to say that when I rant on these things, and I will rant in the future, and I have ranted in the past about like, I was upset that they didn't kill these characters. It's not like I'm like bloodthirsty and want these characters to die. I want that feeling of loss. And I'm not just like chasing depression basically, but I just think loss is such an important part of storytelling. It's such a narrative nugget that no one uses well that it upsets me when I don't see it in a piece of content that I consume. And so, to say that like, oh, I want these characters to die, or I want this character to die. It's not necessarily that I want the character to die. I want loss. I would be totally fine with if they wrote a character that loses their powers and then they become a side character. Because you still get that feeling of loss.
Yeah.
Like if Spider-Man lost his superpowers,
exactly.
or if Doctor Strange suddenly lost
Loss doesn't have
access
to
to
mean
magic.
death.
Loss doesn't have... I use death because it's the easiest example, and I talk about it in the death terms. But
I think it's a lot more interesting when you have loss without a character dying.
exactly, that's sort of what I'm saying.
It's so much more nuanced.
It's so much more nuanced.
It's so much more of a credit to the writer's skill.
Exactly. I say loss because it's in my...
Yeah.
I'm not a writer and I'm not a good content creator. I've tried writing and I'm not very good at
The
it.
problem with Marvel is that the loss in Marvel is lazy.
No, the
right?
loss is immediately undone. Any loss is
I mean,
dialed
Ajax
back.
died in the Eternals, right?
But
you don't feel it.
You don't feel it
because
because
the
she
writing
wasn't a
is
character.
Lazy.
Imagine if in Eternals, Thor had died.
Yeah.
People would have lost their minds. They'd have been
Yeah.
like, what the fuck, this isn't even a Thor movie. And then they watch a future like MCU movie and they're like, what, Thor's dead? What, since when? We would feel that because we're invested in that character. We're not invested in Ajax because Ajax is barely in the film. Ajax
yeah,
maybe
exactly.
has like
and that's why
5
killing
minutes
her
of
off
screen
was
time.
just lazy.
It was just lazy. And so this feeling of loss is not really prevalent in a lot of... It's not just the MCU. MCU is like... I think they are one of the biggest... like... I don't know the word I'm looking for. They're one of the biggest sort of like...
Franchises.
criminals. I don't know. They're the biggest like people who do this.
culprit.
Culprit. They're the biggest culprits of this. Thank you. They're the biggest culprit of this. That they have this movie and there's no feeling of loss. The feeling of loss is that like where like the character maybe isn't gonna win and you're not sure. Like they do that in all their films where the character like, oh no, there's that moment. Are they gonna lose? No, they're not gonna lose. They win.
I think that's okay because I don't think that loss is the only reason to tell a story. Now, we tell stories because there are things that we want to explore as humans, and loss is a big one, right?
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that the MCU does really well is big moments of triumph.
I don't agree with that.
No?
I don't agree with that because the second the film starts, I know that there's going to be a moment of triumph, and if I know that something is coming, it is less impactful to me. Like imagine knowing you're going to have a surprise party. I know you personally maybe don't like surprise parties.
No, I would love to be surprised. I love surprises.
Exactly. Imagine I showed up tomorrow with like a candlelit dinner for you and was like, hey, come sit down. We're going to have a candlelit dinner. You'd be like, oh my God, this is so surprising and so meaningful. Imagine if the day before I said, you want to have a candlelit dinner? It's fun, but it's less impactful. And that's exactly what I'm saying is though it is fun, the impact is dampened a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I do a candlelit dinner for you, I'm not going to tell you.
Okay, well, we'll see.
We don't leave the house is the biggest problem. It's hard for me to surprise. It's going to happen. It's hard for me to surprise you with stuff because we have a like tiny apartment. You see everything I do. How am I supposed to surprise you with something? Anyway, to tie this back into sort of making it.
What you're saying is I should leave more often.
Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah.
To tie this back into what we're talking about, to tie this into What If. I think What If does a good job of exploring loss.
Yeah.
I think What If, each of the episodes, there are characters that you get invested in, but you're not necessarily sure that that character is going to get their ultimate, golden goose egg at the end.
Well, and then at the very end, Peggy, Captain Carter, has to go back to the modern time.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't get that get out of jail free card that Steve Rogers does, where he goes back in time and is with Peggy. Peggy doesn't get that. Peggy is told, no, you have to go back.
But I think they imply that Steve's still alive at the very end there.
Yeah,
She opens the box and you see the Hydra Stomper. Yeah. So anyway, let's talk in detail about the episodes. So episode 1 is Peggy Carter becomes Captain Carter. She gets the super serum instead of Steve Rogers.
Yeah.
I liked this episode.
I did too. I really liked that she and Steve Rogers still had a thing. It kind of was like,
that was, I think, one of my favorite things.
They're not in love with each other because he's Captain America.
Yeah, they're not like these alpha specimens that like society is like, they're both traditionally attractive, so that's why they like each other.
Yeah.
It's like you really feel that what they kind of implied in the movie, that Peggy sees something in him that no one else sees. Or Peggy and Dr. I can't remember the doctor's name, that gives him the super serum. They see the strength of Steve's character, not just the strength of his like muscles.
Yeah, and and like you said, in the movie they end up being these alpha specimens or whatever, but in What If, neither one of them are traditionally what you would deem attractive.
Exactly. Like buff and like strong empowered women are definitely not viewed as like attractive in media, which is stupid, and I don't get that. And so I like to see that here.
Yeah, I really liked that. I really liked that they were still together.
And I liked that they weren't afraid to admit that in World War II times, and even modern times, not to say that's much different, women were viewed as like, you're not going to fight in a war, you're a woman. And so I thought that was interesting. I thought that they, like, them willing to explore that as the general or whatever being like, no, we're not sending you into war, you're a woman.
Yeah.
I was glad to see that. I was glad they didn't go like, oh, you got the super serum? And then she just follows Steve's plot line.
Well, yeah.
She doesn't exactly follow his plot line. They follow it kind of close. And so I think that was like interesting.
I feel like, just imagine if they had followed Steve's plot line where she's essentially a showgirl. Ugh.
Yeah, it would have been awkward and weird.
Yeah, so I don't think they could have done that even if they wanted to.
And I think it is a funny sort of like parallel with Steve's character that Steve is a little bit naive, I think. And even when he becomes Captain America, he's a little bit naive. And that's why he did that. He was like, I want to help any way I can. They're like, okay, go dance on stage. That's how you can help. And he was like,
Mhm.
okay. Whereas when I think they literally do ask Peggy Carter to like go dance on
Mhm.
stage, and she's like, absolutely not.
Mhm.
And it does show that there is a huge difference in their characters. They didn't just like have like, oh, what if Captain Carter got the super serum? She's just Captain America, but
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
British.
Yeah, so I loved the portrayal of characters in this first
Yeah.
episode. I thought it was super great.
So one thing that this first episode did, and I'll talk about it now so that I don't have to end up forgetting it or trying to remember it later, that they kind of do it in the future episodes, but they don't do it to the degree of this episode where the watcher goes, this is it. This is the moment that changed what happened.
Mhm.
Like I liked that tiny domino like cascading
Mhm.
effect that sort of explains why things were different. They like kind of do that in the future episodes, but not to the degree of this first episode. That the decision
Yeah.
for that, like literally just the small decision that Peggy made to stay down on the like floor instead of going up to the
Yeah.
observatory changed the fate of the entire universe there.
Yeah, I think if you look at the episode titles, they're actually a better indicator of what that moment was.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like the Doctor Strange episode is called What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart and Not His Hands or
Yeah,
something like that.
exactly. And I didn't know that that was the episode title. When I heard
Mhm.
that, I was like, that is beautiful. That's such a
Mhm.
good title. And that
Yeah.
so encompasses
Yeah,
what the story is.
I didn't know that either until I looked at the titles.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, oh, if they'd done like a title cap or something like that at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Or like instead of having that like Marvel like comic scroll or like have that there's a little like watcher like introducing like across the multiverse. Da, 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 da. Instead of having that, have each of those be like him explaining what's happening,
Mhm.
Like, let's
Yeah.
explore. What if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? And then you
Yeah.
go into the episode.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I would have liked that to be a little bit more overt because you just don't have time with a 30-minute episode to like.
Yeah, exactly. To like have these explorations of like that moment.
Exactly, right. So you really want to get the audience into it right away. You want to tell them exactly what you want them
Exactly.
to
You want to
know.
cut as much as you can. And
Mhm.
you really feel that in the first episode that they're like trying
Mhm.
to get to like showing you all the different things that would have
Yeah,
happened.
yeah,
And so
exactly.
they cut a lot of that in between that happened in the movie of like him,
Yeah.
doing I don't know, I'm not going to like
Yeah,
go
you
through
know
the
what?
movie.
This is actually the problem with the Marvel Universe, the MCU, is that they have trouble with being concise.
Mhm.
If they were first years writing an essay, at the end their TA would be like, "You fail. You did not tell me the thesis at the beginning.
Yeah.
I should not feel like I don't know what the point of this was." And I guess that's really one of the big flaws is that they're just long-winded.
They are long-winded, and it really feels like sometimes they'll introduce these characters without knowing exactly what they want to do with them, and then they kind of go like, "Oops,
Mhm.
here they are." Like Guardians of the Galaxy's really felt that way in Infinity War and Endgame, where it's just kind of like, "Also, these guys are here,"
Mhm.
and they were good, and I liked the sort of like meshing of like character teams. I think they bounced off each other really well, but I think that's a credit to the actors, not necessarily the storytelling.
Yeah, it's true. The characters really do make the MCU, especially the
Mhm.
big blockbuster releases. Without those actors, the movies would have flopped. The movies would have sunk like a
So
stone.
So like exactly what I mean then, that these characters like these movies are not good movies.
No, they're not.
So like I don't know, people give them I think too much credit, and I mean I go see every Marvel movie, so I'm a bit of a hypocrite here,
They're
but
fun.
they're
I don't
fun.
think you shouldn't go see them. They're definitely fun.
I
But they're
sometimes I
not
think I shouldn't
good.
because I don't like them. I don't like these movies. I'm always surprised when I like one of them. I was so
Really?
surprised I came out of Shang-Chi not being like, well, there's another one off the checklist.
I like them. I think they're fun. I definitely would go to the theater to see them. I'm not expecting for them to be good.
I am. They have so much money and they have so many resources, and they have the most successful actors in their roster. And the fact that the only thing that is giving them credit is the fact that these actors managed to pull off interesting characters is not a good movie.
Yeah, they're not good movies. I mean, what does it mean for a movie to be good, though, right? Because look at the films that win Oscars. I don't like them either.
It's true, and that like I brought that up earlier, that like these Oscar bait movies are kind of the only things that get released in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
But there are good movies that get released every now and then, and like they don't try to be these Marvel
Mm-hmm.
Cinematic
There
Universes.
are.
And like I'm really bad at like recalling information whenever I'm like talking about it. Like that's why I never remember people's names. So I wish I could right now give you an
Mm-hmm.
example of like, remember this movie? That movie was great, but I can't.
Yeah.
I just can't think of anything right now.
Well, and it's kind of sad as a reality, but fantasy and sci-fi movies are generally throwaway.
Yeah,
They're generally just like the pulp fiction of the movie world.
yeah,
They're like these they're easy to consume, but they're sort of basically empty calories, if you want a metaphor.
yeah. And I think I've eaten too many empty calories. I
You
need to
want
bulk
some
up.
substance.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, those films that have that, like, quotation marks substance, like the Oscar bait films, they're also not good. They're intentionally manipulative of your emotions, and you come out feeling like shit.
exactly.
Like,
That's sort of what I was saying. That like sometimes they lean too hard on the loss, and it just feels like they're just sort
yeah,
of beating you over the head with it.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to come out of a movie feeling like I've been beat up.
Yeah. I hate to like give Quentin Tarantino too much credit, but he does a really good job, I think, of making films that are these like action blockbusters that have the themes that I like, where it's like there are characters that die. Like we watched Django Unchained kind of recently, and
Hmm.
like they have main characters that die. I'm not gonna, so I don't have to add it in the spoiler warning, but they have main characters that die, and they have these like, is the hero gonna lose? No, he's gonna win, and it's like
Hmm.
I don't think he ever would, but I think that these directors should take notes from Quentin Tarantino. And I think he's an overhyped director, so I hate that I had to talk about him right there, but
I
it's
never end up
true.
liking his characters, though. And for
I like
me,
some of his
that
characters. I think he
for
writes them way too
mm,
crass and way too like belligerent sometimes.
yeah, and for me, I just come out of the movies not feeling particularly invested because I just never end up liking the characters.
Yeah. I like Django Unchained. I think that's one of the few ones that I like. I don't really like a lot of his other movies, and I liked Kill Bill.
Mm.
Anyway, episode 2. We're really ranting this episode. I mean, I feel like we didn't really know what we wanted to do this week, and then you just convinced me to do What If. Like I wanted to do anything but the MCU, but you like talked me into it. So I guess that's why we're sort of ranting.
Yeah. The next episode. Oh boy, I should have written down the actual names instead of my notes. But it's What If Chala was Star Lord?
Oh yeah, yeah. What if I don't remember the Ravagers. I guess what if the Ravagers picked up T'Challa instead of Peter Quill? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, this was a really fun episode. I thought this was the funniest episode,
I
actually.
think so too. I think they tried to make the like Thor episode the comedy episode, but I thought this was the much better
This
comedy
was
episode.
so funny.
Yeah, so funny, so like, and it's like one of those things where you're like, yeah, I agree with that. That like it really showcased that like T'Challa was a super likable character. He had his like iffy moments in Civil
Mm-hmm.
War, and I know you never watched Civil War, but in Civil War they kind of introduce him as a bit of an edgelord. But once you get to him in the future MCU films,
Mm-hmm.
he's like so likable as a
Yeah, he
character.
really was. And so I think it's so funny that everyone just loves him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he gets treated so differently from Peter Quill.
Yeah,
And I think that's really funny.
yeah, and I think it's this believable subversion of character where like they show like that T'Challa is really likable, and so when they start showing everyone like him, you're like, okay, I agree with that. But to me, it made me also think about how unlikable Peter Quill is, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not that I like think he's a super unlikable character. Like I don't like Peter Quill, but I think it like he is a bit of a jerk, and he is a bit of an idiot, and he's a bit of a like
Mm-hmm.
kind of unlikable character, and I it made me like him more after watching
Mm-hmm.
this episode because I like that there is that character that isn't this like he's
Yeah.
this paragon of good.
Yeah, well, Peter Quill reminds me of the classic, um, this is gonna sound awful, but the classic white guy hero in films who like is kind of just a dickhead,
Mm-hmm.
but ends up with the girl and solving all the problems, and you're just like, if I met this man and he hit on me, I would like throw my drink at his face and leave the bar.
Yeah.
Um,
I think people were upset when Peter Quill like was attacking Thanos when he was like in a trance, and they were like, "Why would he do this? He like no one would do that." And like this episode made me think like, yeah, he would do that. If you think about how awful Peter, not awful he's been, but just how uh like nah, I'm trying to think of a word. How just like I'm really bad today. I'm really like not remembering words.
hmm,
I think I didn't sleep well.
how just average he
No, he
is.
he just like he is really like overly emotional. He's aggressive, and
Yeah, he is.
he's a bit of a like brash person where he just like lashes out a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's totally believable that he did
Oh,
that.
it completely is.
Yeah, people got really mad at that moment, but I
Yeah.
believed it.
Well, and I mean, it's not that I don't like him as a character. He just has his flaws. And he's not my type. Turns out.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a good episode. There's not really much to talk about in that
hmm
episode. I thought it was funny. I thought it was like interesting.
I felt episode 3 was kind of a throwaway. That's Ant-Man killing the Avengers
It
before they
should have
assemble.
they should have gone harder with that one. That should have been Ant-Man kills the Marvel Universe.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have comic books that are like Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, Punisher kills the Marvel Universe, and they have these like anthology series that they come out with where it's like, what if this one character just killed everyone? And
Mm-hmm.
it gets really interesting. Deadpool I think was the most popular one because Deadpool is just a very popular
Yeah.
comic book character. Um, and spoiler for Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, it ends in an awesome way that they really go as far as that character can go. I never read the Punisher one, and I think there's a Wolverine one, and I never read that one. But the Deadpool one was like, because his character is known for breaking the fourth wall,
Mm-hmm.
and they go as far as him literally killing like you.
Oh, interesting.
Uh, I don't think they fully show him like killing you, but they show him killing the writers of the Marvel universe to be like,
Oh, yeah, I've
and
heard about that.
they're writing the scene as he's doing it. They're being like, wouldn't it be funny if like all of us are sitting in a line and he just comes in the door and it's like they're in the background and he's in the foreground being like, well, this is the next thing, and like I'm coming for you next, and it's sort of like implied
Mm-hmm.
that he's gonna kill you in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
And I think they could have done that with this episode. They could have had like Ant-Man kills the Marvel universe and like gone really far, and they could have tied him into that overarching plot of like uh, Ultron killing the multiverse type thing.
Yeah.
That it could have been not instead of Ultron. I liked what they did
I
there,
liked what they did.
but I think Ant-Man could have come along for that because Ultron and Ant-Man are supposed to be parallels in the comic books.
Huh. Really?
We'll get more into it when we get to the Ultron episode.
Okay,
But
sure.
yeah, there's not much to say about that. I
No.
called it pretty instantly. I don't know if you remember me saying like as soon as they kill, I think Iron Man is the first one they kill. Uh, I was like, oh, is this gonna be like Ant-Man kills the Marvel universe?
I
And
don't remember you saying that.
my one friend was like, why? Why would you think that? What makes you think that? I was like, I don't know. This is probably the one instance where I like actually called a plot, and then it got to the point where like they say a line that's like something micro in the needle like ejected first. I was like, oh yeah, I'm right. It's totally Ant-Man kills the Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I don't know. It was an okay episode. There was nothing egregious about it. It just wasn't very interesting for me. I don't.
I think wasn't interesting for me because it wasn't the Ant-Man that we care about. It was the dad.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah,
more
I
sense
guess
from
so.
a plot perspective.
It does, but you're right. I had no investment in the character of the dad from Ant-Man, and so I like didn't
He's supposed
care.
to be the original Ant-Man
I
type
know,
thing.
I get it.
But yeah, we've never like seen him do anything, and we've never seen him like explored too much as a
Mhm.
character, so I wasn't too invested in that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Episode 4 was my favorite, and I
Yes.
think yours as well. Doctor
Same.
Strange lost his heart.
I like the finale. I think I like the finale a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit more,
No, I
just because
meant,
I'm an
like,
action head.
out of the anthology.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, Doctor Strange loses his heart instead of his
Yeah.
hands was the best one, and I think as an episode, it wasn't that good throughout, but at the end there, that is sort of the like cork on it makes it enjoyable.
Yeah, I really liked how it mirrored sort of the Doctor Strange movie where, you just go through it again and again and again and you're kind of doing this time loop and
Yeah.
Eventually in Doctor Strange, what was it? The alien overlord, whatever thing that was attacking them just gave up. It's just
Kind
like,
of.
fine.
Kind of, yeah. That is kind of
Look,
what
it's
happened.
been a long time.
I think it's
I don't
implied in
remember
that
that well.
he's been doing that for like thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's what happens in this episode,
Yeah,
basically, where
yeah.
he just does it over
Over
and
and
over
over and
and
over
over
again
again.
until he can get it right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of amused that Doctor Strange's thing is to just do things over and over and over again
He's
until
just
they
so
resolve.
like, this is the result I want. I will take no other
Yeah.
alternative. And so I like that too. And I think Doctor Strange is a compelling character. I thought the
Yeah.
movie was kind of like meh. I think they could have had it been more of a. This is one of the few movies where I think it could have been more of an action movie. I think they
Yeah.
tried to do it a little bit different, and then it suffered because of that. Like they tried to make it more of this like visual trip instead of this like action film.
Well, see, and that's the thing. Whenever they try and do something that's even slightly different, people are like, no, we don't like that. Stop it.
It's true, and
So,
so we say
what
it's
are
true
they
so
meant to
much.
do?
We've noticed like
We need
we
a
say,
counter.
yeah, exactly. We need to like set up a it's true counter. But I think that he was really interesting in Infinity War. Like when they showed him fighting, he like one-on-one fights Thanos for a little bit in Infinity War. That's my favorite part of that
Yeah.
film.
I think the fights out of Doctor Strange could be super cool.
Exactly, because he has all these like abilities that aren't traditional superpowers. He like uses magic spells that like do a specific thing, and I think he could be really interesting. There's this interesting like in the comic books he kind of has the solution for everything always. Like he has like a spell that gives him wealth beyond wealth. So it's like he's like, oh, I need to buy something, magic spell. I have infinite money basically. And there's more than that. He has like he's unaging. He has like he can go into like pocket dimensions to like get away from like explosions and stuff like that. But I think at the MCU they are trying not to do that. Have him be these like I have the solution things. It's he maybe has the answer to a lot of problems, but he doesn't have the ability to solve a lot of problems. And so I think he is really interesting
Yeah, he's
when he
very
fights.
cool. Also, that cloak is probably my favorite comic relief character in the MCU.
Yeah.
Like, you know how they always throw in a character for no reason and just give them all the, like, stupid jokes?
Mm-hmm.
And I hate that character. I always do. But
Yeah.
I actually really like the cloak. I think the cloak is really cute.
Yeah. And the cloak is silent. I think that's the positive of
Yeah,
that.
I think that's probably why.
Yeah. I think another to like go back to Doctor Strange. I think the reason I like Doctor Strange is because he is this sort of like, I mean, it's the same actor, this like Sherlock Holmes character where he's like, I basically know everything, but he doesn't have that like I can just solve every problem by like, you know, oh, I just move this penny 2 inches and it solves the world's problems because I could pre-thought 10,000 steps in the future. He has this like, I know how to solve the problem, but I just don't have the power to do it. And so I'm trying to achieve the power to do that. And this episode really showcases how far he's willing to go
Yeah.
to get the power to
Yeah.
solve some of his problems. And so I think if in future films with Doctor Strange, they could explore that theme of him like, you know, there's something that he can't solve. How far
Yeah.
is he willing to go to try and
I
solve
hope that they do. I think the way that I think characters should be written is that their strengths should also be their biggest flaws,
Yeah.
and Doctor Strange's biggest strength is his resilience. Like
Yeah,
he is
exactly.
resolute. Once he decides to do something, he will do it over and over and over again until he gets it done.
Yeah.
And I think that's also like if you flip that, his biggest flaw would be like what extent is he going to go
Exactly. He's very headstrong, and that once he decides something is like the solution, he's not willing to take an alternative. There's an interesting theory going around that Doctor Strange kind of wanted Iron Man to die, that he purposefully planted that seed of like the only solution is for you to sacrifice yourself in Iron Man, and that like maybe he's going to kind of go down the villain route. That could be interesting.
to. Yeah, I very much doubt that that's
I
true.
doubt it too.
But
The other thing I wanted to
could be
say
interesting.
is that I hate in films when one character is the joke character and then other characters make the same jokes that they make, and so they all kind of feel like who like where is the diversity here? Like who is this one that's supposed to be kind of funny in this way and kind of funny in that way, or like kind of funny and versus kind of serious?
Yeah,
I
they
think
all end up having the same sense of humor because they're all written
written
by the
one
same person.
Exactly. I feel like Doctor Strange does a good job of separating the comedy of their two comedy characters. Where Doctor Strange has jokes where he goes like, "Bring it on, Beyonce" to Wong, and it's
Mhm.
like really funny to me. And
Mhm.
I believe that that's the kind of joke that character would make. The Cloak doesn't make those kinds of jokes. The Cloak doesn't really make jokes. The Cloak is just funny.
Mhm.
Um, and apparently that like it wiping the tears for him and him like swatting it away was ad libbed
Oh,
by that
really?
actor. Yeah.
Okay. Very
Um,
cute.
yeah, it's super cute, and
Yeah.
I think that that really sort of like is the perfect duo there. I guess Thor and Loki is a good example too that they both have, and I think that's why people like Thor and Loki too. That they have
Mhm.
these characters that they wrote them kind of separately. Like
Mhm.
they wrote Loki, I think, to die in that first. Maybe they didn't write him to die, but they wrote him very like different than Thor because
Right.
he was supposed to be the villain. And now that he's leaned more towards being a
Right.
hero, they've like changed his character arc a little bit, but they really separated how the two of them are in that first film, and that kind of stuck.
Mhm.
That Loki's very arrogant, Thor is just kind of dumb, and that's what makes each of them funny.
Mhm.
Instead of it being like, oh, here are all these characters like that like gang, the Thor's gang. I think they're all dead now, but Thor's like hero gang. I don't know if you remember
Mhm.
them.
Yeah, the warriors.
Yeah, I can't remember what they're called. The Warriors of Virtue. Who cares? They're dead now. I don't care about them. They all felt like the same character. They all felt like they had the same jokes, the same like kind of ideals, and the same like arc.
Well, and this is why I say that the credit for the MCU really belongs to the actors and the people who did the casting.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, that's that rant
Yeah.
that I wanted to go on. That like Doctor Strange is an excellent character, and I think I want to see more of him.
Oh, yeah. I agree. And who else is going to carry this next arc of the Marvel Universe
Spider-Man.
anyway?
It's gonna be Spider-Man.
Well, yeah,
Since we're
Spider-Man,
talking about
Doctor
the MCU,
Strange.
we can like talk
Yeah.
more about like Spider-Man, and that's I think the next movie we're gonna watch and talk about maybe Witcher or maybe
Yeah, I think
the
maybe we'll do
Matrix.
the Witcher in between. But,
We'll do Spider-Man Matrix or Spider-Man Witcher Matrix.
um, something like that.
And we'll just
Yeah.
watch and see what we feel like talking about. We might not even feel like talking about those films, so who
Yeah,
knows?
we'll see.
But yeah,
The next episode was What If Zombies? And that's just what it was called.
yeah. Well, before we get into this, I do want to mention that, like, for Spider-Man, it is clearly set up that Spider-Man is going to be the next character
Oh,
that's
sure.
carrying the like
I
plot.
think
And
Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and I hope Shang-Chi are the ones who get the focus because they're the only ones that I like so far. I hope they recast Black Panther
Yes,
and
I hope so too.
that becomes more of a thing.
Yeah. What I'm
Um,
hoping for is that Shang-Chi, because of how popular it has been, he takes more of the center role, and he's kind of the next, not Iron Man, but he's the next, like, Iron Man. And that Doctor Strange is kind of his mentor.
mm-hmm.
Because they are really closely connected in that Wong
Right.
is the one that comes and picks him
Yeah,
up to be like, come
exactly.
on, we got to go. You're an Avenger now, basically. They don't say that, but
Yeah.
it's implied.
Well, yeah.
Um, and I think it would be really interesting that Shang-Chi does have a lot of these elements of the mystical arts in
Yeah.
his sort of character, but he is more of a like Thor slash like Iron Man character where he's like, I'm just here to like kick ass.
Yeah. I punch good.
He punched real good.
That's what the
Um,
premise of his powers is.
I think it would be cool if in this multiverse of madness we see that Doctor Strange maybe makes a decision that is a bit evil and that he starts to, not quite evil, but I'd like to see him sort of be like, maybe he goes through this multiverse and he realizes there's this entity that is eating universes, say, and is going through the multiverse, like devouring them, and he realizes, okay, he's eventually going to get to our universe. I'm going to do something kind of evil to like lock this thing away, maybe. And then he kind of comes into the Avengers movies or these ensemble movies that they start making. I don't know if they're going to keep calling them Avengers. He comes into that, and he's sort of the mentor because he's the like
mm-hmm.
older wizened one that's been in these battles, and all these characters are new and sort of young, and he's going like, this is the right thing to do, and they're all kind of like, yeah, but then it's like, we know that he's kind of evil and that he's willing to make these like evil choices, and that he's kind of corrupting them a little bit, and then it ends with them having to fight against him. Maybe that would be cool.
would be very cool.
That would be very cool.
That would be very cool.
Because we've seen that Doctor Strange makes a compelling kind of evil character.
Yeah,
And that
he
even
does.
when he's evil, he's not really evil. He's just sort of like too headstrong.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just too committed.
He's too committed. So I think that would be cool. There's a character I think called Shuma Gorath that they're gonna have be the main villain of Multiverse of Madness. He's very cool. He was one of my favorite characters in Marvel vs. Capcom. He was very weird and very funny. He's like a squid monster. He's very
Huh.
Cthulian.
Huh.
Uh,
Well, they definitely make references to sort of Cthulhian monsters in What If.
yeah, I think those tentacles were supposed to be Shuma Gorath-ish.
Okay.
I don't know. I
Cool.
don't know. And I
So,
think he is a like
yeah.
embodiment of madness in a way. I don't remember really.
Enough delaying it. What If Zombies?
What if zombies? I didn't like it. I thought it
Yeah,
was boring.
it was okay.
It was okay. I would have liked to see the progression of it instead of just being dropped right in the middle of it. Because it starts with where Infinity War starts, where Hulk shows up and is like, "Where are the Avengers?" Everyone's a zombie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it would have been more fun to have it start maybe like after the first Avengers movie, like Loki's about to win, and then then the zombies happened, and like show each of the heroes dying in their own sort of like zombie way, how they're
Yeah.
beaten by these zombies. Because I don't understand how Iron Man lost. He's in a tin can.
That's
How did they
true.
bite him?
How did they bite him? Who knows?
Who
Maybe
knows?
he wasn't wearing the suit. Did he
But
remember how to put it on afterwards?
It kind of implies that they know how to use their powers as these super zombies.
Yeah.
So like maybe, but I don't know. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan. Yeah, I have the Marvel Zombies comic if you want to read it.
I doubt it.
It's
I
equally as
just-
compelling where
eh.
it's just kind of like this joke story about like, oh, look at how these characters are like zombies now.
Yeah.
And there's a really interesting thing where I can't exactly remember. It's been like 10 years since I read it or something like that. Where a few characters are kind of immune to the zombie virus, where like the zombie virus makes you like so hungry that you just like want to eat everything, and that's kind of what it is. Not exactly. Not even really. It's just like you become like mindless and like you want to
Yeah.
bite people, but certain characters still keep their consciousness even when they're turned into these like monsters.
Yeah.
So like I think Spider-Man is one of them where he's like he is a zombie and his jaw is like hanging unhinged and his flesh is rotting, but he's still like Peter Parker in his consciousness. It's interesting, and they didn't really do anything with that. I think the most interesting thing was that like classic zombie story of like one person unwilling to kill their lover, and so they like lock them away and feed them. That's like in every zombie movie they have someone doing that.
Yeah.
And so it's funny to see that in this.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting that the two episodes that felt the most throwaway, well, except Party Thor, but Ant-Man and What If Zombies, those are the two episodes that didn't like yield someone who is part of the later ensemble.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like they could have maybe done something more interesting there. Later on, they have Gamora in the ensemble, and they don't do an episode featuring Gamora, and I would have been interested in watching that.
Yeah.
Especially because later on, she's the only person in the ensemble who you haven't seen in a previous episode. And so you're just kind of like, what is Gamora doing here? Why are we watching this?
They might have had an episode where it references her. I can't remember what it would have
No.
been, but the other thing is I feel like maybe they cut the episode.
Yeah, I think they cut the episode.
Yeah. It might have been just like not compelling, like what if like Gamora was on the side of Thanos? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
And I feel like maybe then they could have just featured another character, like a different character.
Yeah. Yeah, they could have had the character from that be that like zombie Scarlet Witch. And she does show up, but they never really show what happens to her.
Yeah. Zombie Scarlet Witch was very cool.
It was very cool, and it was very like in theme that she's this like witchy like kind of character. So I think it worked really well.
Is that your witchy?
Yeah, that's my witch sound.
Okay. Cool. We'll just set you up in front of the door next Halloween.
Yeah, I'll just like put on a little hat, carry a broom,
Yeah.
scare the
all
kids away.
Kids away.
Yeah. Goals.
Okay. Episode 6 was Killmonger basically saves Iron Man, betrays him, and then becomes Black Panther.
Yeah, this movie felt really compelling, but I don't think it was that good. Like, I was really interested in what was going to happen, but it never felt like anything really interesting happened, and it really felt like this was just a what if
Yeah,
for the
it was
sake of
pretty
what if.
standard.
Yeah.
I thought that Killmonger as Black Panther was one of the more interesting characters.
Yeah.
Um, I thought it was really fun. I thought that his motivations for like, I want to advance Wakanda and like
Yeah.
be the person who people look up to.
Just
That
felt
was
like
kind of
there were
fun.
too many plot conveniences and too much. This was the episode that really showcased the like, what happened to the like, this is the one pivotal moment that changed
Mhm.
everything. I didn't really feel that in this episode. And there was that like thing where Tony Stark hasn't quite made Iron Man yet, and he goes like, I have this idea for these like androids, check it out. And it's like Killmonger just has these robots he invented. It's like, I thought
Yeah,
you were a soldier. Like, what?
it's true.
You just
It's just
created these
like,
Gundams? Like, what?
where did these come
Where
from?
did these come from? And like, it just felt weird and kind of like not sensible
Yeah,
to me.
it didn't make a lot
Too
of sense.
too many things that like the what if universe changed about
Yeah.
these characters, where it's like I don't see the cascading effect that leads to this.
Yeah, the actual episode in itself was a bit of a mess now that you mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you know what? I still really like the Killmonger Black Panther thing. I think it's very interesting.
I think so too. And I think that Michael B. Jordan is just a really good actor, and that character like was really compelling, and so it was compelling to see him like go through and do
Yeah.
these things and kind of play this like betraying people without them really realizing.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I really liked Captain Carter as an episode, but I didn't really feel like, oh, I love any of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
The inverse is true for this. I loved Killmonger Black Panther, but I didn't feel like the episode was particularly good.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good sort of way to sum that up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then episode 7 was Party Thor. I don't know what it's actually called, but
I don't care. That
yeah.
was a bad episode.
It was
I
the
didn't like it.
worst one.
It was the comedy episode, and it was kind of stupid. I like the like, oh, Loki and Thor are actually kind of friends because they weren't brothers,
Yeah.
and they like call
Um,
each other brother. I thought that was a funny joke, but
I
meh.
liked seeing sort of cameos from a whole wide variety of characters.
Yeah,
Like there were a lot of people who came to their party basically, and you're
yeah,
just like, oh yeah, I remember that one.
yeah. But besides
Uh,
that, I think it was a pretty bad
yeah, it
episode.
was really a throwaway.
Yeah,
And the whole like call his mom thing, like, can we please grow up? Can we please just not have that be a thing anymore?
it's in line with Thor as a character. I think it would have been funny if they had Thor have the bleached eyebrows. I know they made
Mm-hmm.
him look like how he kind of looks in like now,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember in the first Thor movie he has bleached eyebrows and he looks like a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been funny to have that.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's in keeping with his character, but that's also kind of why I don't like Thor.
Yeah, he
Um,
just feels like a big baby.
yeah. And it's not even that he's a big baby, it's that no one ever like calls him out for it.
Yeah, there's this weird like, oh, he's worthy and he can lift the hammer and he's like the true king of
Hmm.
Asgard and all this sort of thing and he's
He's
the like
really
rightful
not
successor.
worthy.
He's really not worthy. He's really kind of a just like jerk.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really get it. Like I really loved in Endgame that his like depression and his like anxiety that he
Yeah.
gets doesn't make him
I like
unworthy.
Thor's character growth in the
Yeah.
films.
What I'm more saying is I like that they pointed out that doesn't make him unworthy.
Mhm.
Like just because he's a bit depressed and he's a bit like sad,
Mhm.
he's still worthy of
Mhm.
like his power. I just never felt like he was really worthy to begin with.
Yeah, and this episode least of all. I mean, Thor in this episode is this himbo man-child,
Yeah.
and it's just like, no, I
Yeah.
don't like it. I don't want it.
Yeah, Thor is one of my favorite comic book heroes, and I think in the comics they write him very well, where like he is more in theme with how I think Asgard would view worthy, where
Mhm.
he's not egotistical, he's self-righteous,
Mhm.
which I think is totally in line with what Odin would think of as worthy.
Mhm.
And so I think it's weird that in these MCU movies he's just this kind of like dumb, uh, like self-absorbed kind of like power monger. Like he thinks he's like, I'm the strongest Avenger, and like he has all these like things he says. Oh, I could
Mhm.
like rip you apart easily. Like, oh, like I'm invincible, and he like has all these things, and he kind of like he doesn't really feel like the kind of character that I would view as like kingly. Whereas in the comic books, he is very like you dare strike the son of Odin, like kind of, and that's the kind of like egotist
Mhm.
I could imagine being like, I'm the king.
Mhm.
Uh, so I think they just did a really bad job of like understanding what the worthy of the hammer is.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much more to say than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like the episode. And Captain Marvel, I don't like the character.
Yeah.
Ugh. So.
I was glad to see that they remembered she existed. And we're like, all right, she's in this MCU sort of thing. Like, it's clear that they
I guess
kind
I
of
better
don't
put her
really care about
in.
her. Yeah, we got to put her in
Uh,
somewhere. I'm excited for her to sort of get a rewrite. I think they are going to sort of try to rewrite her and make her better. And I think when they do that, they do a good job. I think when they like really
mhm.
focus down and rewrite a character, because that's what
Yeah,
happened with
because
Thor
yeah,
Ragnarok.
exactly. They
Is
rewrote him and it was much better
much
after
better,
that.
so much better. And like they did lean more into like him as a doofy kind of like I'm the strongest
I'm
Avenger. Like
fine
do
with
do
him
do.
being a bit goofy.
Yeah,
The first two Thor movies, like, he had all the personality of a can of soup.
yeah. In
So,
the Avengers movie, I think he's pretty good. I think they
yeah,
write him really
I
well
think
in the
they
Avengers movie,
do
but then
better later on.
Thor 2 is after the Avengers movie, and they just like went back to him being
Right.
kind of like annoying and
I think
boring.
that was one of the low points of the MCU.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Anyway,
we ended up talking about that episode way too much. That was a bad episode that doesn't deserve to be talked about.
it's true. Okay, and then the last two episodes were sort of focused on building that ensemble. So episode 8 was Ultron 1.
I felt like this could have been a good episode, but this episode felt like it was just setting up the finale.
Yeah, it was. I thought there were some really sweet moments. I think Hawkeye Black Widow is very sweet.
Yeah,
Um,
the two humans are the ones that survive.
yeah, but I love that they're like friends. They're like proper friends.
Yeah, I like that too. I like that they don't feel the need to give them a romance ever,
Yeah.
and they never really. I like maybe they kind of implied it like early in the Avengers movie.
Yeah, but then they took it back. They were totally
Yeah,
like, no,
and even
no,
then, I
never
think that
mind.
was just people like reading too much into
I
that.
think so.
Two people
Yeah.
being like, "Oh, there's a guy and a girl. They must be like romance." It's like, no, they're just good
Well,
friends.
I think, and if you look back on like sort of the first phase one of the MCU, it's much more traditional, like tropes and things like that. And it is a little sexist and a little bit. It is. Come
It is.
on.
Yeah, yeah. I know.
Um, and so that early sort of maybe plot thread for them getting together was
Mhm.
very quickly dropped
Yeah.
later on when the writers were like, okay, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say about this episode. It was pretty cool. I don't understand why Arnim Zola was like the alternative to Ultron, because isn't he like a
Isn't it
Nazi?
just worse?
Isn't he? He's like full out a Nazi.
know.
It's like, I get that Ultron is like killing universes, but like putting a Nazi in that body isn't going to make things better. I think.
Well, and then that's the later thing, right? Where the Watcher is like, oh, I foresaw this, and then like captured them both in one universe, in one little universe ball.
Is that on? Oh yeah, it is. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, I thought he just like died after they inject him. It's like he's in Ultron's brain, and then he just like short circuits him. I forgot that he survives.
Yeah, he survives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good point. What was their plan before the Watcher was involved? Like,
Yeah.
just Black Widow and Hawkeye. What was their plan? Like, we're gonna make Ultron a Nazi? Like, that'll be so much better.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know either.
I don't know.
That's why I say this kind of felt like it was just like to set up the finale.
It's true. And you know what? They had
Is it
was
true?
the
true?
look I'm giving you. um, is true. The look I'm giving you is true. Um, thank you for losing me my train of thought. Yeah, it's true that they were setting up the finale, but
Mhm.
I guess this was a very last-ditch effort for Black Widow and Hawkeye because they're
Yeah.
the last two people left alive, basically.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, is it true?
It is.
Uh-huh.
So then the final episode. What if the Watcher broke his oath?
No, wait, I want to go back for a second.
Really?
If
Why?
they're the last two people left in the universe, why are they even bothering with this, really?
Because that's the point of the Avengers. So we won't like maybe we won't save our world, but we'll sure as hell avenge it. I think is the line he
Hmm.
says.
That's right. That's true. I don't think they knew Tony Stark in that world, though.
Yeah,
Did they?
yeah. Who?
Oh, was this
Tony
just
Stark
their
invents
regular?
Ultron.
Oh, right. Well, that doesn't mean that they knew him.
How would they get to that point without the first Avengers movie happening?
All right, fine. Sure, they'll avenge Earth, whatever.
Yeah. Anyway,
It
that's
feels
like,
like a pointless victory, though.
oh, of course, but like the thing is, you never let the villain win. It's sort of the like theme of these people is
That's
that
a bad lesson.
why?
I
Elaborate,
That's a bad
please.
lesson. I mean, no, that idea of like we won't let them win no matter what it costs, like,
Not no matter what it
or
costs, but
like,
it's like we're gonna try to win, and if we don't win, we'll avenge. That's like how
yeah,
you become an Avenger. Is you keep fighting past the point of like loss.
yeah,
Anyway, this
hmm
episode kind of meh.
yeah. Well, I liked the moment where they were in the like facility or whatever where they are, and Hawkeye looks through that like one last box and he gives up. And he's just like, never mind. And then the Watcher's like, no, what are you doing? Why are you doing that?
Yeah,
Just one last box. It feels very much like the moviegoer experience where you're just like, no,
yeah,
stop. Why
it's
are you
true.
doing that?
Uh,
Stop that.
I really like that moment too. I think that's probably the one moment that stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the like ending when Ultron's like,
Mm-hmm.
"I see you," and then he's like, "What?" and then he swipes
Yeah.
left on him.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I guess that's very much the point of the Watcher is that the Watcher is supposed to be us in a sense, right?
yeah,
Where he
yeah,
just like watches all the worlds like a movie, and
yeah.
at the end he says like, oh, I care about all these worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like the ideal scenario as a movie watcher, where you come away and you feel like you care about the characters.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, very on the nose, but yeah, that's true.
There is another character called in the comic books at least called One Above All,
Hmm.
and they are much more in theme with that because they are the one that it's like implied that that is the writer of the current comic book story that you're reading. Like if they
Hmm.
ever have One Above All come into a story, it's like whoever is writing that current story. They originally portrayed him to look like Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, I think his name is, like sort of fused
Hmm.
together. And those were the two heads of Marvel when they first introduced him. And I always thought that was cool. That like
Hmm.
every time they have a story about the Watcher, it's usually about the Watcher being like, I can no longer stand by and watch, and then he like
Hmm.
interferes in some way. At least every story I've seen that introduces the Watcher, or a Watcher, I should say. There's multiples in the
Hmm.
comic books at least. Oh no, in the MCU too. They show the Watchers earlier, uh, and so I feel like yes, they are sort of like implied to be like the reader or the Watcher. They're the current
Hmm.
observer of this movie or whatever. But I think it's implied that this is the person that can interfere in a way,
Hmm.
and so it's always about them interfering.
Hmm. Interesting. Well,
Hmm.
on that note, the last episode is called What If the Watcher Broke His Oath?
What if the Watcher broke his oath? This was probably my favorite episode because it's like a cool action episode, and it really like got to that level of
Hmm.
like combat that I really liked about this power level of character. Because
Hmm.
like in the Dune movie, it's like slowly implied that he's like slowly gaining power and he's eventually going to be able to control time and space, kind of. These characters fighting, I believe, control time and space. They have these
Hmm.
weird things that they do that maybe don't make sense, but they like are metaphorical to the combat that they're having. Like
Hmm.
they're shooting lasers, but it's not like they're like actually shooting lasers at each other because these beings are so beyond like, you
Hmm.
know, damage and that sort of thing. It's more of a battle of wills.
Yeah,
And
and I
it's
liked the colors in the
yeah,
fight scenes. It was
it's
very like
represented to be very
Technicolor
yeah.
moments.
It's like there's no other way to represent this kind of fight without it being very like nonsensical. So to represent it in a sort of like Dragon Ball Z style of like shooting lasers at each other, I think is a better way of doing it.
Yeah, it was nice.
And they showcase cosmic power
Hmm.
in the way that I like it portrayed, where it has a look to it. You don't really understand what I mean by that, I think.
No.
In the comic books, when someone uses literal cosmic power, they talk about it in Eternals that like, oh, we have cosmic power inside of us, like infinite
Hmm.
cosmic power. whenever they show cosmic power doing something in the comic books, it has a look. It has like this sort of yellowish look with these like black dots in it. I'll bring up a picture
Oh,
for you.
yeah, okay. I think
And
I
the
know what you're
Watcher like
talking about.
charges
Yeah.
his fist up and does a big like cosmic punch.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time we've seen that in the MCU, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I want to see more of that because it
Yeah.
really does separate like what different things do different things because they have so many different names for things.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And, I am a big fan of color. I
Yeah,
enjoyed
and I'm a
all
big
the
fan of
color.
Dragon Ball
Yeah.
Z, so there's a lot of that. And I liked that they did things that I feel like you won't ever see again, like Ultron growing and like biting into a universe. I thought that was really cool. I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, and of course they got to do a lot of this because it was an animated series, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, most MCU stuff is CG anyway, so they could have definitely done something like that.
Yeah, but when you do that sort of thing with CG, it looks corny. Like it looks cheesy, and it's just not what you want. Um, yeah. It's just not what you want because CG, while it looks very real, our brains are not able to sort of accept what they're seeing. But we're used to seeing that happen in cartoons, right? Like
Yeah.
we're used to those moments in cartoons, and so I think you get away with a lot more when you're doing some sort of animation that looks like animation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, but I think it would be cool to like see that more.
Well, I mean, you do have that moment in the Eternals when you have Arsham, who's like this big red giant
Yeah, yeah, but they never
space
really
thing.
showcase him doing anything until the very end when he like phases out of reality. I
Yeah.
loved that moment. That is my
Did you?
yes. That is
I
the
thought
only
it
thing
looked a little cheesy.
in like 2 weeks from now, like when it's been a month since we've seen this movie, basically. That is the only thing I'm gonna remember about the
I thought it
Eternals.
looked very cheesy.
I thought it was so cool when they're standing on the planet and they're having that like weird
Yeah.
discussion. It was like
Yeah,
such
and
an
then he,
awkwardly
like,
acted scene, and
comes
he
and
like
appears
zooms
and
up to the world
yeah.
and the clouds part and you see
Yeah.
him. I loved that.
Did
I
you?
thought it
I'm
looked
glad
so good.
somebody loved it.
It's what I want with these massive cosmic level characters. That they're not these like, I'm going to shrink myself down to stand on your world. I'm a cosmic level being. I'm super powerful. It's like it literally showcases their power with their size. Where he like goes like, you betrayed me, and then rips them off the planet basically with his like mind powers, and then goes like, we're going to judge you, and then phases out of existence by like sucking himself into a black hole. That's cool. That's the kind of stuff
Yeah.
you need to do with these characters that are more powerful than anything.
Yeah, I think my real issue with it was that when that scene happened and he like appeared in the sky, um, there's just something about the color balance of that scene that just didn't hit with me. I don't know. Everything
It's a bit
seemed
ridiculous
little...
no matter what when you have a giant red space
No,
wizard.
I know, but everything felt a little gray and like the colors just didn't have a punch to them.
Hmm.
I don't know. The visual effect to me didn't look good.
To me, it looked good.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're like
Yeah.
completely torn on this because I thought that was probably one of the best parts of that movie was when Arsham like zooms up to the planet and the clouds part. To me, that's the only thing where I felt emotion.
Hmm.
Where I was like, whoa, cool.
No, it didn't hit
Hmm.
for me at all.
Interesting. Well, I guess we kind of have like different takes on what we like. Like I love action and I love like stuff like that, and so that to me was like the
That's
most
true.
interesting
I'm
action.
very invested in art
Yeah.
of the film, and for me that moment wasn't particularly well animated.
Hmm.
I think the moment actually where like Cersei appears on his hand
Mm-hmm.
for the first time is done much better.
Yeah, I agree with that, but
CG
I
of
think
it
it was
was much
interesting
better.
to see it because that felt more like it was a like an illusion almost, like she was
Mhm.
just seeing it. It wasn't actually there, which like that is what it is. But for this, like to have him like
Mhm.
actually be there, I felt that where it's like
Yeah.
he's not just like standing back and being like, oh well, they killed Tiamat, whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, zoom, what the fuck did you just do?
Yeah, I think the reason when you're in space, you can sort of make the lighting look a certain way, which is very pretty.
Mhm.
And you just sort of lose that as soon as you bring it into Earth,
Yeah,
like on a cloudy day,
yeah.
in a park. So it just, for me, artistically, it didn't feel amazing, so it didn't hit.
Hmm. Yeah, but this last episode was probably one of my favorite episodes. Like between this and like Doctor Strange losing his heart episode, I think gave me the two things that I've kind of been missing in the MCU. One is a story not about like the character triumphing; it's about loss, and one is just a full-on like cosmic level fight.
Yeah, what I liked best about it was that it was kind of unexpected. These were not the heroes that you would expect.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that that ended
I
up being
liked
the
that.
overarching story.
Yeah.
I wasn't too surprised. I was like, oh, well, yeah, of course they're going to do an ensemble of these characters.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised, but I liked the like slightly evil Doctor Strange.
Yeah, slightly
and
with Doctor Strange, slightly
morally
like
ambiguous
Killmonger, and like idiot Thor that isn't really a hero.
Yeah.
He hasn't
And,
had his like hero moment yet.
Thief Chala.
Yeah.
Basically, which is I liked that aspect of it. I
I
thought
liked
that
it
was
too.
fun.
Yeah, it didn't feel like how it feels in the Avengers movies, where it's like, oh, of course these characters are all going to cooperate and work together. It's kind of like, oh, like yeah, these are the like last. Not it didn't really feel like the last choice. Like that didn't really land for me. Him being like, you are the only ones that I could rely on. It's like, I feel like you could totally rely on anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, you had all the universes to pick from, and you picked these guys.
Yeah.
Really?
But yeah, it was good. I like that. I like that it was
Yeah,
sort
I
of like
liked
a
that.
little bit unusual.
Yeah, I liked that you got to see characters who were unusual for an action movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have liked to see Thor swapped out for someone else because I think Captain Carter, Gamora, T'Challa, and like Star-Lord, T'Challa, and Killmonger as the like final heroes isn't the band that I would expect. But we've seen Thor be in the like final band before.
Yeah.
So I would have liked to see like instead of him have the like ice
Well, then
Loki or
who's
whatever, the
gonna
like ice giant Loki.
scream "Viva Las Vegas" as a battle cry? Like, you gotta have the cheesy humor.
You, yeah,
Yeah, I would have much rather had Loki.
I think that character wasn't really focused on, so maybe not. But like I don't know, you could have had someone else.
No, I'd like to have had Loki from the Ant-Man episode, who ends up coming in, defeating Ant-Man, and is now the King of Earth.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, you're right.
I
on
think that Loki would have been fun
Yeah.
to have in there.
Or that Nick Fury maybe.
Yeah,
Just
and
someone
he would have
unusual.
been very motivated. He's finally like achieved his dream
Yeah,
of being
exactly.
King of Earth, and then the Watcher's like, yeah, if you don't do anything about this, your universe is toast.
Yeah. And Loki does share a lot of character parallels with Thor, and that he's a little bit like bullheaded.
Yeah,
Like though
so
he's
I
more
think I
like
would have
conniving
swapped
and
them out.
cunning. Yeah,
I
I
think
agree
they
with
didn't do an episode focusing on this version of Gamora, and so I like really didn't care that
Yeah.
she was there at the end.
I agree with that. And she's just kind of there to have the Infinity Crusher.
Yeah, exactly. Which
and
doesn't end up
even
working
working, yeah.
anyway. Which, like, while you're watching it, you're just like, well, but then why is she even here?
Yeah.
But then at the end, he's just like, oh, I knew exactly how it would work out, and this is exactly the like
Yeah.
thing that needed to happen. So
Yeah, I didn't really feel that.
yeah, nor did I.
Like, and I feel like no matter what they did, you could have just had the Watcher say that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not
Exactly.
really
So it's
important
not,
who
like,
they would have brought in.
important that it was Gamora and
Yeah,
the
I
Crusher.
think the episode I would have wanted to see is instead of Party Thor, or like I want to look up what that episode was actually called. Instead of Party Thor, have it be what if Gamora took over for Thanos after he died.
I think the episode is called "What If Thor and Loki Were Friends Instead of Brothers."
Yeah, because that's the thing that
Yeah.
they changed is what if like Odin didn't take Loki.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's still I didn't really feel it as an episode.
Yeah, and I didn't really feel Thor as part of the final ensemble.
Yeah. And I would have liked Gamora in that final ensemble. I just wasn't invested in her character. So I think
Yeah.
replace the Party Thor episode with
With Gamora's actual episode.
yeah. It maybe was a poorly written episode, so they cut
Maybe.
it.
And replace Thor with Loki
Yeah.
from the Ant-Man episode. And that way, all the episodes would actually contribute to this ensemble, which I
Exactly.
think would have been nice and tidy and something that I like as just from a narrative standpoint.
Yeah. So we're pretty much we're way over now. There's a bit we're gonna have to cut down, and we're maybe gonna lose like 5-ish minutes. So we're still like about 20 minutes overboard. So let's. I'm just gonna read the list of these, and I think we're just about done here. Like,
Yeah,
there's not really
well,
much
you know
more I
what?
have to
What
say.
I want to know is what are other what if scenarios that people wish were in this series?
Yeah, I want to know more accurately. I want to know what is a better what if sort of like one single thing you would change that you think would lead to a cascading effect in the Marvel universe, like how it was in that first episode. What if Peggy Carter
right,
decided
right.
to stay on it instead of like what if Deadpool had been there? Like, obviously you can have these like crazy what ifs where it's like you fundamentally change a
Right, but
story.
what's one fundamental
Yeah, what's
moment?
one fundamental moment that you would change just slightly to have
Right.
this sort of like
That's a
domino
very
effect?
cool question.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I want to actually ask you that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you have. So now I don't know. I
Well,
don't
we'll
know
cut out
what
the like
it
you
is.
thinking about it, just so
Okay,
that it's
yes,
not like
thank you.
20 minutes of you thinking.
Sorry to think about it.
While you think about it, I'm gonna read the titles. Uh, let's see. Oops, they are cutting them off a little bit. So the first one is what if Captain Carter were the one that got the super soldier serum? What if T'Challa became Star-Lord? We knew the title for both of those. The third episode, what if Ant-Man kills everyone, is called What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes? Not a good title. I don't
No,
like that.
I think that's probably why I didn't call it that in my notes.
Yeah. I get it because they wanted the plot twist of like it
Mhm.
was Ant-Man. So if they said, what if Ant-Man killed the Marvel heroes, it would have been like, oh, I know exactly what's happening here. But I think they could have come up with a better title than that. Like, what if the world lost hope? I think would have been a better title.
Oh, that's such a good title.
Yeah. Because then it's like, you're kind of like, what is that? And that is the joke they make. Not the
Yeah.
joke, that is the like reference they make later. Like, hope, it's all about hope. And they're like, hope. And then it's like, Hope Van Dyne has died. And that's
Yeah.
what set him off. Yeah, the next one is what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? Great. What if zombies? I mean, I guess, what else would you title that episode? And I like that. That is like an actual comic book title. So, and it's like exclamation mark, question mark. So, what if, what if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark is the next one? Could have had a better one than that. Yeah, I'm not sure what I would retitle that episode. I'll maybe think about it. What if Thor were an only child? That's a
Yeah,
good
okay.
title name, actually. I like that. What if Thor were an only child? It sort of encompasses what the episode is and what the sort of like character development is. That like Thor being an only child, he's much more of a like party time. I
Yeah.
don't care about anything. But I just didn't like the episode. What if Ultron won? That's a good title. What if the Watcher broke his oath? That's a pretty good title too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these are good titles. I think I really wanted that for each episode, that like, what if here's one pivotal moment that I would change that has this cascading effect throughout the like Marvel universe. I'm going to spend some time thinking about what I would want too, but we'll splice it in. What, did you think of one?
No.
No?
I didn't.
There's no one moment that you would
It's
think?
so hard. This is such a hard question.
Mm-hmm. It is a really hard question.
It is, yeah.
You know what we could do? We could answer it next episode.
Yeah, let's do that.
Have a week to think. Actually, no. Let's answer it in the Spider-Man episode if we end up doing a Spider-Man episode.
Okay, sure.
Because if next episode is about The Witcher, I don't
Yeah,
want
it
to
won't
talk
make
about.
sense.
I do not want to talk about the MCU unless we're talking about an MCU movie. I'm fucking sick and tired of talking about the MCU.
Oh boy.
All right. Well, thanks. Let us know what you think a good what if pivotal moment would be. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, goodbye.